Hello and a beautiful morning it is in the city of Jos, and today is the 21st of November 2022. You're welcome to the morning segment program, The Dailies on Echo Television International, where we look at various stories that are trending from our Nigerian newspaper. I am your host, Elisha Dashom, and my co-host is Rachel Tanzi. Good morning, Rachel.
Good morning, Sarah.
How was the weekend?
It was fine.
Hope you rested well.
I
You
did.
look gorgeous this morning.
Thank you. So do you.
Thank you so much. Remember, we're live on Facebook and also on YouTube viewers, so you can do well to be actively involved. Follow us on all our social media platforms at Echo Television International, both on Facebook and also on YouTube. And you can drop your comment or any contribution that you feel will be impactful for the well-being and also the build of the nation. I'll be starting with the first paper, which is the Punch newspaper. And I'll start with a big story. NFIU flag 150 trillion naira transactions. EFCC track candidates spending. The writer following the story, suspicious transaction up by 22.91% amid rising political activities. EFCC intensifies surveillance on APC, PDP, others campaign funds. Banks get fresh EFCC and FIU directive as 2023 polls draw closer. Other stories still on the Punch. We have pro-Fire Me lawmakers plotting my removal coming from Ekiti Speaker. Stalemate aggrieved PDP governors with fresh options that you can find on page 2. And still on the issue of food crisis, we have in Nigeria rigged food crisis in 2023. Says the International Monetary Fund, and that also you can find inside the paper. And we're having another story that says how foreigners, middlemen capture Nigerian gas markets. Zenith Bank lights up Victoria Island for Christmas, and you can see the picture supporting that. Ohanaeze endorses Obi, says it's our turn. Gunmen abduct Kwara cleric's son, demand 100 million naira ransom. Mob leaches transport bus for killing or your teenager. And I think the story that is actually very interesting and also very impactful and really got my attention is the big story where we are having EFCC intensified surveillance on APC, PDP and other campaign funds. And I think it has been going on from last week or even before last week. We've been seeing whereby the EFCC have to have a very close look, especially when we were having the redesign of the Naira notes. And in less than 3 weeks or so from now, we will be having the new Naira face as from 100 Naira, or I think 200 Naira down to 1,000 Naira or so, where we'll be having the new face of the Naira. And in the spirit of that, we're having EFCC checking these political parties closely to be able to know their source of income. I think we spoke about that. We need to know how do they generate the fund that they are actually flagging up their various campaign. If there is a money that have been fixed, 5 billion naira is what you are expected to use for your campaign, where you're seeing them spending hundreds and hundreds of billions of naira for their campaign. So I think it will be right for the EFCC to actually ask them to be, ask them relevant question in relation to the money that they have been spending, and they need to give us the answers. And we're seeing that banks have even been opened down to Saturday for people to be able to deposit and also be keep their money so that when the new Naira note is out. But then I think at the time like this, where we're having money laundering left, right and center, and then it has even, as a result of this, it has even brought more inflation rate, because we not just look at the food and transport, but we know that all of this is also part of the reason why we are having our Naira devaluing. So I hope that with all of this, EFCC will do well. They have been doing their best, and we really have to applaud them for the measures they have put in place. But we hope that they put more measures, because we really, really need to see, because as 2023 is drawing near, we're still feeling not really very secured with things that are happening. But we hope that EFCC will do all that is needed to work together with, if we're talking about NDLE, have been doing their best even when it comes to drugs and all of that. So we're really applauding the FCC. I hope that more will be done. Surveillance, close surveillance need to, so regardless of who you are, high, mighty, everybody needs to be accountable, because we need to have a country where we can see we are free of every corruption of any matter.
Even on the papers on Friday, there was already showed like some update concerning progress of how much the EFCC have been able to get back. And then I was like, okay, yeah, this is the kind of like update we need to keep seeing as Nigerians. It make us say that, you know what, truly the government is out to fight corruption. And then this new policy concerning the never redesign and the aim for it to make money regulates in the bank more than it has been outside is actually working, because now this is 150 trillion naira transaction and EFCC are putting on more surveillance. So it means that in a way, yes, this is pushing people out to bring out those money. And then what the CBN is aiming at, having money to be regulated in the bank, to circulate in the bank, and then is happening. Yes, more needs to be done, but I feel, yes, we can say kudos to them because we are seeing the results and they are giving us update that is actually working. So let the EFCC keep doing their job. And yes, concerning the political parties, I think that's a big concern in a way, because we saw on the papers where PDP is having a deficit of over 8 point something billion, when the parties are just expected to spend at most 1 billion, and we saw that APC was having 2.6 thereabout deficit to how much they earned and how much they are spending. Yes, we saw that on the paper. So now I keep saying, what is INEC doing about it? Stop giving us all these stats and report. What is the punishment? What are you saying the parties must do? How are you trying to make sure that they are called to book? Let them tell you what they're doing to get this money. Like, we need to know, because it doesn't make sense if PDP is made 600, if the money that INEC knows PDP has made as an income, if they're about 670 billion naira, and they are spending a million naira, and they are spending over 8 to 9 billion in campaign and all of that. Where did that come from? Like, we need to know what other means. We just, as a country, we need to know, and then INEC needs to also, what is the punishment? Not just about saying it, do the action. If you just keep warning them with mouth, nothing will happen. True. But when there is an action taken for this kind of spending, whereas there is a constitution, a law that says you're not supposed to go above, then it means we're also going to vote people who are not even law-abiding citizens in the first place. Because if there is a law that you shouldn't spend more than a certain amount, and you go about spending that amount, then it means you're breaking the law. And then we are expected to vote you into power, and you can't even keep the law that your country has already put there. So in a lot of ways, it doesn't speak well. True. It doesn't speak well on so many angles. So I hope that I hope INEC does something about it, and even the EFCC should look into the political spendings also. Of
course, Richard. So we look forward to seeing them walk the talk. And that's all on the Punch newspaper.
On the Daily Sun newspaper, why we endorse Peter Obi by Ohaneze. Excitement as World Cup begins in Qatar. You can read that on page 29. Military gets ordered to tame terrorists before elections. We've been directed to stop criminals and gunmen from disrupting polls. This is a report from soldiers. Hope rises for increased production as Buhari flags off oil exploration in Bauchi and Gombe. And I believe this is a good one for the economy of the country. If we can find oil in other states, then I believe that is more wealth. But I believe over the years, we've seen that the problem of Nigeria is not the money, but we have lack of policies not implemented well. We have corruption eating up, because we have the oil, but then theft is eating up our wealth. So it's not about finding more oil, but managing what we already have. And whatever will come back, the agriculture, whatever sector we decide to boom, will just be a plus to us, because we are already managing what we have enough, because we have enough. We are not just managing it well. Corruption is eating us up. Theft is eating us up. So it's not all about exploring and finding. It is a good thing, but we need to prove that we can do well with the little we have. And then finding more resources and more money will just be a plus to our economy.
Yeah, you, Richard, and you know, this is not just about Chigombe. The first state that was discovered from the northern part was Kogi.
Yes, Kogi.
And we saw Kogi, and now we're seeing Bauchi and we're seeing
Gombe.
And just like you were saying, it's not about discovering it, because I remember vividly, or I hear stories when our parents were saying that the first time oil was discovered, it was more like we've finally gotten our own wealth. But eventually, the oil has become a cost on us, because you could see that lots of things have happened. That was when we had the militant left, right, and center. The amnesty program had to be created to be able to tame all of that. And then right now, we are struggling with oil theft, that we are still trying to trace who are the people. Recently, even on the news, we are seeing that even military men are saying that the technology that is oil theft begin, and it's embarrassing when I hear things like this. I trying to tell them that they are more advanced when it comes to using the digital space than we are. It's expected as a country we should be, you know, more innovative, more intelligent, more tech than they are. But then when we are saying, coming from the, you know, the CEO of NNPC, saying that the technology they use is even more advanced, then it calls for a question. Are we trying to say that we are not up to the task as it is present? So just like you said, I think it's high time we start concentrating on oil, non-oil export, than actually concentrating on this oil and then importing, but we're buying it back, and then we're not buying it using our naira, we're using it, buying it using the dollar. Now you can, we're not even giving our naira its own value. We're still struggling on consuming our own products.
True.
People prefer to wear a shoe or a dress made in China, made in Italy, and when you said it's been made in Nigeria, we don't want to patronize it. So I think, just like you have said, it's not about discovering this oil, but then are we ready to be accountable? Are we ready to do all that is expected? Our refineries are ready to say that we fix it. If we're saying that from next year mid-June we'll stop the paying subsidy when it comes to fuel, what is the implication of this? How would the common man be affected? We're still struggling with inflation. Banks are actually, CBN is planning to increase, you know, interest rate and all of that. So there are lots of conversation that is going on concerning all of this. So we just look forward to when we'll do the right thing, so that at the end of the day, we'll know that we'll be happy. And that's why we keep talking. We are still, you know, adding up our voice, the voices for other people there. If we really want to change the policy of the way things are, then we need to elect the right leaders into position, so that they'll be able to know and have the right agency that will look into this oil that have been discovered in these various states.
And you know, so you just made a very, like, an important statement concerning having the militant, like the oil became like a cost to us because of the many problems surrounding it and its face. And I realized that no matter how good something is, if there's no structure, systematic structure, good enough to sustain that thing, it becomes a problem to the system. You found oil in the southeast, and you didn't sit down and build a structure and design a structure where the community will benefit from it, where the community will not suffer. That community will become a problem to you. And I believe that that has been the problem with oil in this country. We haven't sat down and given a blueprint. Our government haven't done that, and no apologies, but that's the truth. Sat down and created a structure for it. For how many years have we been having oil in this country? Why don't we have at least 6 well-functioning refineries? It means that there's a fault in our structure. Why would the Niger Delta have to wait till there's amnesty for them to benefit from oil that it's been gotten from their place? So even if we find oil all around Nigeria, like literally everywhere, as long as there is no good enough structure, like a blueprint, a policies, mandate that will guide us, we will still be in big trouble. Because you know what? Tomorrow there will be militants in Gombe. There will be in Kogi. There will be wherever this oil is, because these people will start saying, we are having this wealth, but nothing is being done for us. So I believe that it's not only about having a good government, but let's have a government that will sit down and create structures that will function even when they are no longer there. That even if 80 years comes and go and we don't have this present government, there are already structures that are put in place that will function with or without them. And this will be structure that even the next government will continue with it, the one after it. 30 years later, we'll have a structure that is functioning for Nigerians. And I believe that that's where we've been lacking. Even when you take it back to we also had mismanagement of oil money from day one in this country. Like when we had our boom, what did we do with the money? What did we invest in? What did we carry? And if you look at it, we didn't invest that money. Okay, there's just been so much fault in our system and the structure and everything that if we will trace it back, we will see that there's been a lot of fault in our government for a very, very long time now. So I just hope and pray that it's not all about discovering all of these things, but that there is a structure in place that Nigeria can actually, like, we can all benefit from it as a, like, a system, and say, okay, you know what, whether PDP is in power, whether APC, whether ABGA, whether Labour Party, there is a structure that can help us as a country. Still on the Daily Sun newspaper, insecurity, unemployment will determine how rural Nigerians will vote. This is coming from a survey, and you can read that on page 6. APC PDP main problem of Nigeria, says Konkoso. PDP crisis, Wike allies meet in Lagos, form integrity group, and the writer says they will still open for reconciliation. They are still open for reconciliation, and you can read that on page 6. Lekki Epe corridor may be washed away by 2024, NCF alert, and you can read that on page 3. Protest as North gets lion's share in NAS new appointment. You can read that on page 26. Crisis hits Adamawa APC. Stakeholders favor Ribadu for Guba ticket. That story can be found on page 28. And that's all the news on the Daily Sun.
On this day newspaper, we have the big story where Konkoso is saying, I will never step down for Atiku Abubakar. Promises to renegotiate nation's debt, says the APC and the PDP, 24 years responsible for insecurity and woes. Insists on restructuring, pledges to employ 2 million police and military. And then we have the NGE wants issue-based campaign that you can find on page 5. And I think it's the right thing, even though I really am against where we have presidential candidate coming out to blame the past administration for what they did or did not do. We've always said it has become a norm in this country that for every incoming administration, they spend the first tenure blaming the past administration of all the evil that is happening. And then when you're in the second tenure, you begin to give us reasons why you cannot complete what is expected of you to complete, because you have wasted the first 4 years, you know, pushing blame on who is responsible, who is not responsible, forgetting the fact that even you presently, you were part of the system that you are blaming. So of what use is it? You said a house against itself cannot stand at the end of the day. So regardless of what political party you belong to, it's all about the welfare of Nigeria. Just like we keep saying, when we do not have a functioning structure, we don't have a system that is well functional, well built, we keep having issues like this coming up. You begin to blame the past administration of what is happening, what is not happening. And I think it's high time that you concentrate on what can you do to change the narrative of things. How can I change insecurity? What policy am I ready to put in place? Okay, yes, we have seen that the NMPP, he has said that he's going to employ 2 million policemen. What are these policemen going to be doing? Are they going to just be in this area? We need more, even though you might not want to sell your ideas to other political parties. But I think these are what Nigerians are waiting to hear. Just like the last paper you read, where it said that insecurity and unemployment will determine how rural Nigerians will vote. Of course,
it will.
Presently, the unemployment rate in Nigeria is quite alarming. It keeps increasing day by day. We'll still have graduates leaving the shores. We'll still have graduates, you know, leaving the shores or the confine of their tertiary institution. We still have people going to serve. At the end of the day, down to the UK and down to the US, it keeps increasing. What are you ready to do as an incoming president? So rather than you pushing blame and saying whether it's APC, whether it's PDP, whether it's whatever party it is, because I keep telling people we don't have just 2 political parties. We have over. So it's your choice to go for any political party that is of your choice, as far as you feel the candidate is ready to take up the mandate of this nation,
Yes.
then we will give him, everybody will rally around that candidate to do the right thing. So we look forward to where we'll have a presidential candidate coming and just saying, this is what I hope to do, without mentioning what the past administration did right or wrong.
And I'm looking forward to where whoever wins the election won't spend the next 4 years blaming the past administration. We already know the damage being done. Just as you said, it has become a habit that I am tired of, and I know every other Nigerian is tired of. You can't spend 4 years just complaining and complaining about what is in the past. We agree. Maybe the past administration didn't do well. Fine, but stop crying about it. What are you planning to do for Nigerians? So yeah, we're looking for, we just hope that whoever will be the next administration for this country should not spend the next 4 years just complaining and playing the blame game about what the past administration did, but rather tell us what you are about to correct and what you're going to do for Nigerians in these 4 years.
Of course, and Richard, it's the responsibility of you and I to actually elect the right person to the office, because you can't force yourself into, with the way things are happening right now, Nigerians are very, very wise. So it's our responsibility to actually elect the right person into position so we don't end up crying too. Still on this day newspaper, we have Oyetola backs World Bank Award emerges the best governor on efficiency of public expenditure. You can read that story on page 12 of this day newspaper. Other story here, J5 governors meeting disrupted in Lagos amid chat of Atiku. Well, you can read up that story too. We have other picture stories here where we can see the Zenith Bank activate Ajosa Adeogun Street Christmas light up, and then downside another picture story where we can see Tinubu condolences visit to the Akandes. So you can do a grab this day newspaper, read any of the story that is of interest to you, and also you can drop your comment on Facebook or YouTube or any of the story that is of interest also. But before I take the next paper, Richard, I would like us to take a time out so that we can catch our breath and also let you actually chew all of the stories, and then we'd love to hear from you on our Facebook or also on our YouTube pages. Do not go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break. Thank you for staying tuned. If you're just tuning in, it's still the Dailies on Airquad Television International. We've been looking at various stories that are trending on our Nigerian newspaper, and I remain your host, Sarah Elisha Dasham, and Rachel Tanzi is here with me. Thank you so much, Rachel, for doing this with me. Yes, just a quick reminder, remember we are live on Facebook and also on YouTube, so we'll really appreciate to hear from you. Want to know what you feel about most of the stories that have been trending on our papers, and also possibilities, recommendation that can actually help in nation building. And we shall move further to other papers lined up for us.
On the Nigerian Tribune, IMF recommends 15% VAT rate, other economic reforms in page 6. And Stella, before we move to the next stories, I think this captured my mind. And 15% for value added tax is a lot. Currently, we are there about 7%. 7.5% in our value added tax. Now, the IMF is recommending like 100, like a double increase, not just 10% increase, not just 20. This is 100, because 7.5 plus 7.5 will give us 15%. And I feel it's a lot. And I would like to know why they're recommending it. On the paper last week, there was another body suggesting 17%. Yeah, 17.5% increase in our value added tax. And I said already, for those of us that know what it means, like say you're using MTN, you know that 17% of your 100 naira is there about 15 naira or thereabout. And that's 7.5%. Now, if it's been doubled to 15%, it's more than that.
Like 30 naira.
Yes. That's like 13 naira. Now imagine this value added tax of 15% on every other product, and you will find out that we might start buying, the value added tax will even be more than the actual price of that commodity, that product, that service, whatever that good will be consuming. In as much as I feel, yes, if tax, of course, is a way of income generation for whatever system of government, but then Nigeria has to be considered. Like, I know there is a reason behind this, and I'm saying if there must be an increase in our tax, 15% is a lot. Any percent more than 10% is a lot. It's going to be too much, and we're going to feel it. Maybe now 7.5 feels okay, which as far as I'm concerned is still a lot to a large extent. But then doubling it is just going to be a lot, and then we are going to feel the effect of it when you see that this biscuit is just supposed to be 10 naira, but because of your value added tax, you're buying it 20 naira or thereabout. Then you find out that the tax is higher than actually the price of the good, because that's what this will mean in the long run. So I know that it is important to have tax coming in as a way of revenue for the country, but I don't think our value added tax should be increased, should be doubled to 15%. That's just my own honest opinion
about it.
Yes, about it. It's just going to be a lot, and with inflation again, it's going to be crazy. Like,
Which
let's
I don't
tell
even want
ourselves
to
the
think
truth.
about. I really don't want to even think about it, because I think was it the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks where we saw the finance minister saying that we have to pay more tax for the government to be able to use it for certain things, or possibilities to reduce our debt.
Yes.
Because we keep borrowing. So in a way to reduce borrowing, we have to look inwardly, what can we do? And I think the best measure they could come up with is increasing the tax. But then I feel that Nigeria wouldn't have been bothered with this tax rate. It's only for every penny we pay into this tax, we can actually see it working. I can actually see that the road is very good, and so I make more money in my business, and then I'll be able to pay my tax efficiently without having any issue whatsoever. Yes, why don't we go? I remember when we were looking at most of all of these let's say service providers, how we can actually look into, why don't I just pay for just the channels I watch? Why do I have to pay for every other thing on all of these? Yes, and then at the end of the day, I don't view all of this channel. Why don't we look into just I pay for what I... So all of these things are things we do, even though people were excited when we first had this prepaid meter where you just actually pay for what you consume. Whatever you pay, you know, that is what I consume at the end of the, even though we're still having other people that are not using all of these things. So just like you said, 15% is quite huge, but then how I wish that we actually use all of this tax to the right thing. Our educational sector is still falling, health is falling, transport is falling. So now the question will be that you are adding my tax, what are you using my tax to use? Because for any layman, he would love to hear what I use. Okay, we're trying to say that even for people paying pepper sellers, newspaper sellers, everybody right now is paying tax. What are you using my money to do? If I can actually transport tomatoes from the village down to the city, and then the road is perfect for me, I will have a problem, because my business is thriving, the environment is very, palatable and all of that thing. So just like you said, it's quite huge. But then I hope that the government will go back, sit back, because this is not just in Nigeria. It's not. Because IMF has, made this recommendation to other states. The UK, the US are also going to pay more of tax. And inflation is not just in Nigeria. It's a global issue presently right now. So we hope that all of this government will actually sit back and see with their agency, what can we do to make sure that as taxpayers are paying this VAT, this value added tax, at the end of the day, the money will be directed to the right places at the end of the day.
Still on Nigerian Tribune, Buhari, Osibajo, Lawan, second-term governors, others to receive billions in severance pay. President to receive 10.5 million and Vice President 9 million. And you can read the breakdown of that on page 28. And the big story on Nigerian Tribune, PDP G5 expands to Integrity Group. Says PDP a great party, reconciliation remains open. Our party is all about integrity. G5 position tallies with Atiku's campaign spokesperson. And you can read that on page 3 and 5. And Atiku didn't fight Obasanjo. He only defended constitution, democracy. This is coming from Laye. We would assure devolution of power to tackle insecurity. This is coming. Still on Nigerian Tribune. Price of cooking gas secured by 70% in October, and you can read that on page 7. Ayatollah emerges best governor on efficiency of public expenditure, and you can read that on page 7. And I believe this is an encouragement to every other governor. We are looking forward to a Nigeria where it's not just one person that is doing a good job, but every other person is doing a good job, that whoever is giving this award will be confused. Who are we going to give this time around? But just like, we can just give all of them, you know, because everybody is doing their good job. So the aim is to encourage every other political ruler, government, and is everybody's job to get this kind of award. Let's all be transparent, let's all be efficient, and let's all manage our funds well, because if we don't manage it well, we can't grow. Because when you look at Nigeria, we keep saying it's not like we don't have the money, but something is wrong. We need to get it right. Still on Nigerian Tribune, 2 of remaining abducted FGC Yari students safe, giving birth of 4 others pregnant. This is coming from the parents, and you can read that on page 27. There's need to negotiate Nigeria Herald Christmas with Ajos Adegun Street light up, and you can read that on page 17. And that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
On the Vanguard newspaper, how politicians still threaten credible polls, coming from the INEC source. And we have the IRIF and RETEC will check rigging, how Nigerians can key in. Immediate access to uploading polling unit result by voters is key. What voters must know and do to navigate the IREV spare. And then we have patriotic INEC staff averting rigging polls in Anambra governorship poll. Now we see that it's not just for the INEC officials, but this is the responsibility of everybody to make sure that we put our hands together to have a very credible election come 2023. Avoid rigging, excuse me, avoid rigging, and then do not be a talk at the end of the day. That's important. Talks at the end of the day, and then parents are the one at the receiving end. You know, it breaks my heart when you were reading the story of this federal government college jury where we're having them being pregnant. Until today, there are some that have not yet been reconciled with their parents. Are we going to talk about the better? A lot of things are happening. And so we really, we cannot overemphasize political party emerge. Because he has a lot to do. So he should tighten his belt. It's not going to be about my personal interest. Is not going to be business as usual. We're going to look at the fact that the educational sector is still suffering. Or we're going to look at the fact that we're looking at how we can stop our health workers from going or even if they're going, how can we now generate revenue from them being going, there? Because you cannot just be there. We are not gaining anything in the country. So I hope that all of this should be what everybody should be concerned, so that we can actually have the Nigeria of our dream. I'm very proud of that green. Maybe that's why I love the color green, because it's the color of Nigeria. But then above all, we're looking at the white, which is peace. We're still looking at insecurity as a threat to the 2023 election. I hope that we realize the importance that we have to put our hands together and actually do the right thing, elect the right person into position come 2023. Still on the Vanguard newspaper, we have the picture story here where we have Qatar World Cup opens with fanfare despite criticism. And we have Amechi saying, I studied law to fulfill my father's wish. And still on the issue of 2023 elections, Electoral Act 2022 subsection 2, how strict adherence to rule of law can savage the 2023 elections. Full federal court pre-election practice direction that you can read on page 14 of the Vanguard newspaper. Still on the financial issue, federal government domestic borrowing crowds out private sector in 2022. And then on 2023, it's our turn of Southeast to produce the next president. This is coming from Ohanize. And on the terror alert, we notify the federal government, says the UK envoy lying. And then we have on PDP crisis, we are still open to reconciliation, says the G5 governors and others. I won't step down for anybody, NMPP's party to beat, coming from Kwankwaso. Gunmen kidnap Kwara's cleric's son, sibling, and demand 100 million naira. That you can find on page 6, and that's all on the Vanguard newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, interest rate hike likely as CBN reviews indicators. Why we are backing Obi by Ohaneze, he symbolizes hope, and you can read that on page 5. Ekiti Assembly boils, Oyetola wins World Bank Award on expenditure efficiency. Cleric abducted in Kwara State. And the big story on the Nation newspaper, G5 governors allies to sustain anti-Atiku movement. And the writer following that story, aggrieved PDP governors chief time meet in Lagos. Wike Makinde or Tom Epezu insist on Ayu sack. Still on the Nation newspaper, 13% derivation, Wike's disclosure on settled South-South governors, and you can continue with that story on page 4. And there is a picture story, those at the meeting we can see Nyesom Wike and others. And that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
On Nigerian News Direct, federal government lacks the power to regulate lotteries gaming within the federated states, coming from the courts. Oyetola banks World Bank award. And on the big story on Nigerian News Direct, no plan to step down for Atiku, coming from Kwankwaso. Vows to tackle insecurity before restructuring. Says call for state police result from frustration. That you can read on page 3. Mohammed Haruna charges media with holding all decision makers accountable. And of course, that is what we do, because we are the conscience of the society. So we have to hold every political or every decision maker accountable for every decision they make, because we do not remind them of their promises. They tend to forget, and that's why we keep hammering on the fact that it's not just one thing for you to say manifestos. I will do this, I will restructure, I will do 2 million employment for soldiers and police. We will remind you come 2023. You said this. And so I believe that media and every journalist is doing their best to hold every decision maker accountable for their promises. And outside of the paper, we have Adireti Bank's Personality of the Year, National Patrol of Christian. That you can also read inside the paper. We have a picture story here for if you're interested. Grab the Nigerian News Direct and read any of the story that is of interest to you.
On the Abuja Inquirer, Tinubu wants newspaper sanctioned, asks NPC INEC to take action. This is concerning the drug report, and if you want to know more of that, you can find that on page 3. And the big story on the Abuja Inquirer, our plan to halt doctors fleeing Nigeria. This is coming from the UK envoy. Buhari to supervise first oil drill in North on Tuesday, and we have a picture story there with Buhari and the downside of the paper, and at the top of the paper there's a picture story with the former President Jonathan and his wife, and that's all the news on the Abuja Inquirer.
On Daily Independent, the big story, fresh rate hike, food inflation may worsen economic woes. This really a sad one, but then this is something that we are being faced with. So I'm not surprised to see this. All we have to do is tie up our belt and do all that is expected of us, because the inflation rate will keep increasing, except something is being done to control that, but it will keep increasing. I think that was for last week, we saw it at 21.09%, and then possibilities that before the end of November we'll be having another high, possibly to be maybe 21.73% or so, so we just hope that we'll do something about that. Still on Daily Independent, we have PDP crisis deepens as Wike and others meet, announce new fraction. I'm open to restructuring, says Kwankwaso. You can also read that inside the paper. Ohaneze reaffirmed support for Peter Obi's presidential bid. Aggrieved retirees sued the federal government over disparity in pension policy. And we're having 133 million poor Nigerians, Serap asked Buhari to probe spending on social safety nets, and that you can find on page 26. And the concluding of COP27 that ended last week Friday, we have climate deal reached on lost and damaged fund for vulnerable nations. You can read more of that story also. How 15 years tax moratorium for Ethiopian Airlines stopped the Nigerian air. Angry AON others insist on level playing field. And the last story on the paper, we have the Nigerian Air Force aircraft bombs terrorists in Zamfara. That you can find on page 7. And that's all on the Daily Independent.
On the Business Day newspaper, the big story, Nigerian stocks go from hero to zero. Still on the Business Day newspaper, what to know about Nigeria's first floating LNG. IGET outline ways to curb poverty in Nigeria, and you can read that on page 4. And that's all the news on Business Day.
On the First News newspaper, battle for the Northeast, how Atiku and Shetima may swing 12.8 million votes. You want to read more of that, you can grab First newspaper. Why Nigerian visa applications are rising coming from the UK envoy, and I think we've discussed that also.
Yeah.
So you want to know reason why it is actually increasing more and more, why Nigerians really want to leave the shores of the country. Do well, grab the paper and read more on that's coming from the UK. And on 2023, INEC vowed to stop underage from voting. And I think this is something that we've all been agitating for.
Yeah.
We've all been angry about that. But I'm happy that INEC has seen the reason. So we'll keep pushing forward and making sure that anybody that is underage do not get the PVC and do not get the chance to even vote. We've seen pictures, videos flying left and right and saying that where we see underage being, present during the voting. So we hope that INEC will do all that is expected to control that and, if possible, eradicate it totally from Nigeria.
And I feel that they should have people in place to check that out in our polling units so that it should be stopped. Because I think it would be bad if there should be a report that it still happened. I feel this is the measure that should be taken to stop this from happening should be there on the election day at the polling unit. Let there be people who are in charge to check that no underage person cast vote during the coming election for 2023. Meaning there have to be personnel that will check that on the election day. I keep saying INEC is not about talking. We know the problem. Put in measures to tackle these problems. Let there be officers that are there checking and making sure that there is no underage voter at any polling unit in whatever part of the country.
Richard, I'm excited about this because I was present in an INEC office. I remember when I went to reapply to get my PVC, where some underage guys came, some boys came to register. And they were asked that they were underage. They were asked to go bring their birth certificate. And because they were not even wise enough, the birth certificate they brought belonged to someone, even younger than they are, These are some of the steps INEC are saying that they can do, So how will they pass and register if they have the PVC? That is where they are supposed to be checked to make sure that they don't even get to register, because elections are not meant for kids, they are meant for mature adults. So I'm really happy that we have some very, accountable and honest INEC officials that are pushing forward to make sure that on the age do not get to even register, not to even have the PVC in the place. Still on the First News newspaper, the big story which is on PDP crisis, more trouble for Atiku as Wike allies flood integrity group re-strategize on 2023. Refused to endorse presidential candidate, vowed not to campaign for him. Insists on argues resignation and declared there's still room for reconciliation. Downside of the paper, Air Force destroy camps, neutralize bandits in Kaduna. And on the issue of flood, Shell donates $1 million relief materials to victims. Other story, lady stabbed lover to death in Lagos. 11,629 teachers write professional qualified examination coming from the Teachers Council. And I'm really happy so we can have qualified teachers in our schools. Still on 2023, Jonathan's men back Tinubu for presidency, and Nigerian footballers who will represent other nations at the 2022 World Cup. Ecuador defends the World Cup host Qatar 2-0 in the tournament opening match. And we have other stories here. NDLEA arrests Saudi-bound widow with codeine in footwear at the Lagos airport. Downside, we have Afenifere split as the new fraction endorses Kwankwaso. So you want to know more about that political story, do well to grab the First newspaper and read any of the story that is of interest to you. Richard, give us the last paper before we round up.
On the Nature newspaper, World Toilet Summit, Nigerians to gear up investment to achieve its target by 2030. This is coming from the federal government. And the big story there is still on COP20, loss and damage, fund for vulnerable countries. Africa can no longer wait for climate action, says Tony Olumelu. Failure to address climate inequity will result to economic disparities for Africa. Impending famine in East Africa is an example of climate change effect. This is coming from a foundation. And at the downside of the paper, UN announces $10.5 million new funding for flood response in Nigeria. That can be found on page 9 of the Nature newspaper. Lekki Epe corridor may be washed away by 2024 if this is a warning and an alert from the NCF. Governor Badaru emerged overall weak. And we still have a story that says Shell begins distribution of $1 million relief materials to flood victims. How crude oil thieves use technology to lay pipeline. This is coming from Mele Kiari. And you can continue with that story on page 5. And that's all the news on Nature News.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for doing this with me. Thank you so much to our viewers. Thank you to the crew members that made this program a success. Thank you to the Echo Executive and everyone that have been praying and supporting Echo Television International. Until we come your way again, do have a beautiful day ahead.